time when I was about to have my grand opening, about 5 days before that great event, I had 6 houses out in the front. I still have those 6 houses, but at 2:43 in the morning on April 25th, we had a tornado come through Texas. It hit Eagle Pass, it hit Seguin, and then it just dipped in here long enough to pick up my 6 houses and toss them around like little boxes on the side of a hill. And I had them on bricks, and I had them stacked on blocks, and I just really hadn't thought. I thought they're 15,000 to 20,000 pounds. What the heck? They're not going to move. Well, I was wrong. And the next morning I came in and realized that we needed to be able to anchor them down to the ground in order to be able to ensure that that kind of thing could never happen again. It was literally a case of one being knocked over and hitting our billboard, and taking both halves of the roof off and leaving it laying on its side. And we tilted the box back up, took the shingles off the roof halves, put the 2 halves of the roof back on, and that's still living in the back today and being lived in. The other house is the Vicky 2, which is out in the back that people can stay in. The weight room, also known as the Blue House, was actually knocked off its piers, slid across its porch, had all the beams ripped off the bottom of it. After a 20-foot slide, didn't have any broken windows in it, and we just jacked it back up, put the beams back on it. That was also the end of building houses that way, because after that I started building a bottom that you could slide across the ground and you couldn't rip the beams off anymore. So that was how the beam structure that we use, it's a truss on the bottom, evolved. It didn't just start that way. It was a product of having ripped off all the beams and figured out, wait, there's got to be a better way to do that. So now it's set up so that you could literally drag our house across the ground and that wouldn't happen. There were a number of things that came out of that. It was quite an educational experience. I thought I knew what I was doing, and I basically found out in one night that there's lots more to learn.
I think it's kind of a cool testament to just, trying something new. You always learn something, and essentially you were taking lessons from conventional house construction and applying it to tiny houses, and that was a quick lesson in you're doing something different. You have to do it in a different way. And like even with this experience with the White Swan, we've both tried some new roof lines that we've never done before, and I'm sure we're doing the same roof lines again, we'd probably do some things differently. Whenever you try things, you learn new things, and
I've learned a lot of new things. Unfortunately, some of the early lessons have been expensive, and some of the things we first thought would last turn out, because of things unforeseen, to need to be modified. Mm-hmm. And so 8 years of this, we've kind of developed some methods that I feel are superior because of these forces. If I hadn't been introduced to what wind can do, I wouldn't have built to resist those forces. And so in many ways, what seemed like a total tragedy at the time, the house was able to now, in a situation like that, literally even a flood, to be dried out and lived in again. Even if it was a little crooked or something, it is not going to destroy the house. And the next morning I came in and realized that we needed to be able to anchor them down to the ground.
You wouldn't just want a cable in the middle, because you'd still have tremendous uplift at the edges.
It goes all the way up to the very top, all the way up to the peak, through the ridge rafter, which is the bar that runs all the way from the front to the back of the house in that case, and then all the way back down again, down into the ground. And there it ties off whenever he pours their concrete piers, which is what the house is going to be sitting on top of, even if we put our concrete footings. We tie off on that, which is basically a couple 100 pounds of concrete on each side, but it's in the ground. It's not just a couple 100 pounds. It takes more than that to get it out. The sheer strength on the cable is 1,200 pounds. That means to just rip it loose, you'd have to at least 1,200 pounds of force. Considering we have 4 of them on there, effectively it would take more than 1,200 pounds of force to rip the house up and take it away, besides its own weight. Ultimately, we had 3 straps on the one in Oklahoma because they're in a higher wind corridor, and you can do even more if you're concerned near the coastline, for example, adding strapping and everything else. But I assure you, when we put the nails into our wood What's different about that and new wood is it doesn't let go of that nail. In fact, a lot of times I just pound the nails over. There's no way without wrenching my arm off that I'm going to get those nails out of that old wood.
And then, of course, like on the porches, we use some extra long screws that go in from through the porch posts up into the porch roof, so that the whole thing is very, very integrally tied. So that the porch, because the porches in high wind situations can actually produce the highest wind forces. You get a lot of uplift. They're like big sails, and they just want to catch everything and go up. And so by using those extra long screws, we can tie that porch roof down. I think we even just learned a lesson recently where, quite a lot, we were doing the cables in the extreme corner of the building, and actually oftentimes that's where the footing sits. So sometimes the cable comes out and then it's immediately squashed by the footing, whereas we can move it out and actually apply a little bit of like pre-tension almost, where we can actually tighten that up. We could actually put a turnbuckle and actually be tightening it down so that the house was really nicely tightened down to its location.